Hi, welcome to the field inspection data for USA, USAX, USNX, and DODX railway cars created by Adam Nugent Rosenberger, DOD Form 1335. The field inspection railway car form has the test the tank valve, pressure, tank valve, gallon, limited weight, lightweight, limited error data, journal pads, type, date, built, date last inspected, ACI, yes or no. And we're going to go down the list, and we're going to talk about each item on the list, how to do the inspection for each one of these. Starting with tank shell cleaning, you're going to either the condition is for all the items. They're either the condition is satisfactory, needs repair, or needs to be renewed. The tank shell leaking is yes or no. The slab and metal wood decayed or missing. The running board, metal or wood, you're going to check if there's rivets. Your tank bands loose or broken. The deck lighting, you're going to take the date and the type. The steel steps, grab iron hand, rail, ladders. You're going to see if they're loose, bent, or broken. Couplers, shank, sidewall, knuckles, pins, lock lift, worn, cracked alignment, or the low, inoperative, striking, casting. You're going to check if it's cracked, broken, or loose. The draft gear yoke and fowler, key cushioning devices, worn, broken, or missing, or they're pounding. The draft lugs, you're going to check the loose rivets, or is this missing? The side bearings adjusted or missing, or no clearance. The side frame bolster, column guides, broken, patched, plated, or striking or worn. The spring packaging, compressed, missing, broken plates or wood. Modifications of state packets. Yes or no. The shield straps or others cracked or bent. Handbrake and shaft and wheels. Shim R and R and R. Renew axle journal. Wheels, flange, cracked, flat spots, thin or rimmed. Axle journals, collar, heat, RJ stamped or fillet. The journal box is lubricated or low or missing. The center plate is either broken or loose. Rolling bearings, adapted lugs, broken, loose, heat. Roller bearings, adapter lugs, heat, water, worn, missing. Seals are broken. You check if either one of those apply. The defect card holder, pack card holders, route borders, tightened or replacing. The paint condition and the mechanical code. All right, your item tank shell, the item tank shell leaking. You're going to check if it's satisfactory, needs to be repaired, or needs to be renewed. Check yes or no. Sorry, I spelled no wrong. The linking tank. A linking tank should have it been transferred as soon as possible. If leaking badly, a temporary repairs must be accomplished. One of the methods is stuff, waste, and impregnated heavy lubricated into the opening to arrest the flow. The rupture is not too great to the soap, but the clay may be adequate. There are strictly temporary expeditions only to perform to provide the transfer of lading to another car. If the possible empty tank selected to receive the transfer to lading should have a similar commodity, otherwise the lading may be contaminated with the two compatible substances becoming mixed. If possible, the load should be transferred by gravity flow. If the gravity transfer cannot be made, siphon or pressure may be used. Air pressure judicially used as only if the car is loaded for the heavy oils. Very low level leak seems to be caulked temporarily by placing of the twine or lead wood pushed into the place with a hardened piece of wood and bronze. After twine and caulking have been tampered into the place, soap should be patted over from the ridge, and two made from the various metals not used in the tank car. Repairs types that may be danger of igniting flammable lading gases and sparks that might occur under the various metals are brought into the sharp contact. A dent in the tanker car does not require any attention if not leaking. Alright, your outlet valve leaks. Many of the leaks occur in the outlet valve underneath the tank that are generally caused by the leaking valve inside the tank. The type of leak often may be stopped in tightening the cap at the bottom of the tank nozzle. If it does not remedy the trouble, a blind gasket can be placed over the end of the tank nozzle and cap screws against it. Sometimes such a leakage can be stopped by moving the dome over and moving the valve up and down several times. Bad leaks of developing in the tank nozzle outlet valve. They issues with the freezing in the cold weather. The water is heavier than oil, so it's formed from the condensation will be set at the bottom of the tank and be the first to run out. The wet water often freezes in the cold weather, bursting the tank nozzle and causing the leak. When it thaws in such a cause, the leak valve should be replaced after the car is emptied and before reloading. Alright, next you're going to check if the slabbing is satisfactory repair or needs to be renewed. You're going to check if it's on a metal or wood. Sometimes they put concrete over metal or wood for the slabbing. Check if it's decayed or missing, but I don't think I found very much on it. Sheeting, when sheeting is damaged, shifting, loading, and other accidents should be prominently replaced, and the damaged portion should be removed and as not of the damage. When remaining the portion in the process, new boards should be quality without large loose knots. If sheathing boards are wider at one end than the other, the car must be exercised to keep the board problem. While not nailing them into place, the board should be lightly nailed, narrow and first on the other end, and then pried into the plumb position and nailed down. The groove in the last board should not be broken off in order to insert the board. The last 3-4 boards should be fitted together in the form of an arch. They should then be used to sprung in position and nailed down. The nails should be not driven into the tongue on the boards and splits them and will cause the leaks, prevents them from the fitting and tightly together. Alright, your running boards. In the background, you'll see the picture of the hopper car with a running board on it. You're going to check if it's satisfactory repair or needs check if it's metal or wood. Check the rivets. Going from the left to right, the narrow running board end support, the angled end panel, the long sill notch, the flat jack pad, the 10 welded panels, and the 16 running boards. Running boards and saddles. Running board and sandals at the top of the boxcar will no longer be required where used to be maintained in safe condition of the AAR standards as guide. Nail must not be used at the running boards. If the screws become loose, they should be removed from the holes and plugged. New screws must be applied in other locations and secured down tight. When running board saddles become decayed and splitted, they will be replaced. Alright, running boards. The installation of a boxcar running board safely measures the top of the newly built boxcar is no longer required. However, such a running board, older the cars, must be maintained in serviceable condition. Fastening of the running board should be inspected regularly, and loose pieces of the rivets and replaced. And preventive maintenance includes parting at regular intervals to prevent rusting. Alright, tank. There should be another one in there. Tank bands. Satisfactory repair, renew. Check if they're loose or broken. Alright, shell plates. The repair or straighten of the dented shell plates generally performed in the same manner as the repairing of the tank heads discussed above, and when necessary to remove the tank plate, must be avoided damaging when removing it is old. The rivet should be driven on the outside of the bucket in the inside using the well-designed bucketing bar instead of another hammer. Rivets must be tight as a loose rivet can be detected. Holding the finger on the rivet and tapping the rivet lightly with the hammer. If loose, it will vibrate slightly. Loose rivets must never be cogged. If they leak, they must be replaced. Alright, deck lining, satisfactory repair, renew, date, and type. In the back, you see the deck on a flat car. The flooring damaged floorboard should be removed and replaced with new boards. If one of the two boards can be removed, split one of both with a sharp-pointed bar to prevent the damaging and joining tongues of the grooves. In any case, the damaged floorboards are removed, and the understructure should be carefully examined. And further damage to the bottom of the boards lining must be removed to allow the room. Removing the floorboards, replacing and applying the new flooring. The board must cover the protecting bolt and rivet heads. Placing the board in position lightly, tapped lightly to impression of the obstruction, then cut the notch into the board enough, then the bolt, the rivet, and secure the board in position. The lining of these damaged old boards can be readily pried loose and new ones affixed into the place. Large number of boards must be replaced, and best when being removing in the belt, them at the belt and the rail work down and up. In the case of replacing the new boards, the belt rail should be secured before working upward from it. That prevents having the last board positioned next to the belt rail. Alright, your sill steps, grab irons, and handrails and ladders. You're going to see if they're satisfactory repair or renewed. You're going to check if they're loose or broken. Alright, here's a picture of hazardous safety appliances such as your ladders and hand railings. To the left, you have the normal, then you have a bent defect, and then another defect of a broken, cracked, or ladder, and then you have a normal defective on the end of the car's broken Coupler, shank, sidewall, knuckles, pins, and lock fits. Satisfactory repair or new. Check if they're worn, cracked, or alignment or low and operative. The maintenance of the operating illustrated figure in the removable access maintenance of the following steps are taken in the inspection type of the coupler, visual inspection, operating parts of the coupler to see that they are not cracked or broken. Test uncoupling device for the proper operation. Check all visual parts of the draft gear and the check cracks of the damaged. Measure coupler height, and the center of the line of the coupler should be 41 inches from the top of the rail. Buffer the center line must measure 42 inches from the top of the rail. Inspect the friction buffers, transition screws, the devices of the loose and missing crack parts. The slack, if any slack exists between the coupler butt and the lower the follower plate and the draft gear body, the cause that should be determined remedial action taken. Slack usually is caused by the worn coupler butt and may be due to defective draft gear. Worn coupler butts may be built into the electric welding and shim plates inserted to eliminate slack. Alright, your recommended coupler heights of the minimum and maximum for an empty car is 32.5 inches at the maximum of 34.5 inches. Loaded coupler height of a car is 31.5 inches, 33.5 inches. Height is measured from the top of the rail to the center of the face of the coupler. Alright, example F is a coupler gauge. The contour is condemned when the gauge is an F-type coupler gauge. The contour is condemned when the gauge can be passed vertically through the contour in position shown in the point of the contacting front of the face of the knuckle in full position. The example of the type E coupler is the contour is condemned when the gauge can be passed vertically through the contour in the position shown with the points at A and C in the contacting guard with the knuckle in pole position. This is your typical decoupler ridge and shank. From the left, you have your knuckle pin location in the body, the head, the horn, the body, the butt boot, the shank, the butt, and the guard arm, and the lugs and knuckles. This is type E coupler. Type couplers components of a you have your type E and F coupler head, and the type F interlocking and H type lock coupler head assembly. Examples of a coupler and shank head on the knuckle side. The use of a contour gauge. The use of a coupler contours to condemn when the gauge can be passed vertically through the contour in the size of the shown in the points A to B and connections with the guard arm. Use the worn limits. Here's a wheel gauge or a flange gauge, which is the original contour, and worn distorted contour shows the worn limit gauge. Your 7.5 shows your hook, link, and the coupler, buffler, draft gear, and side buffers. Those are predominantly used. The side buffers are predominantly out of knockdown fleet from the Ocon US. Typical Wilson arrangement: friction buffer number 1, number 2, Wilson coupler 3, the buffler spacer 4, the coupler support 5, the draft gear yoke, and 6, the transition device. 7 operating points of the type E Wilson coupler, throw arm, bolt and nut, lock, support hook, and thrower and filler block. The operating parts of the type L Wilson coupler: body, lock coupler, thrower, coupler lever, thrower, coupler lock, seat and set and coupler lock, retainer and coupler belt, lever and coupler. This is in strike casting. You're going to check if the satisfactory repair or renew. Check if the crack or broken and missing. In the back, you see the strike casting patent. The strike casting is a large metal casting secured to the inside end of the center sill. The casting has 3 main functions. First, the front lugs restrict the movements of the draft gear. It is also acts as the support of the coupler shank. Third, it is the main component to absorb heavy impacts of the center sill. To do this, striker casting of the heavy metal block that lines up with the horn of the coupler. The car receives excessive pushing and extended against the coupler will compress the draft gear that allows the horn to coupler to contact with the face of the structure. If the gear becomes several worn or receives too much impact, it may become damaged. The warnings possible problems with the equipment. Alright, your draft gear, yoke, follower, key, and cushion device. You're going to check if they're satisfactory, need repair or new. You're going to check if they're worn, broken, or missing, or pounding. Typical friction, drafting gear, draft gear parts and yoke, front follower, compensation pads, front cushion follower, cushion pads, rear follower, retaining bolts, and steel shims. Your draft lugs, your satisfactory repair or renew, check the loose of the rivets are missing. Your type E, typical coupler draft arrangement. From the left, you have the draft cost, cross key, your strike casting, coupler, cross key, container, follower plate, draft gear, iron, the yoke, the front lugs, and the rear lugs on the, so you can see the rear and the front lugs on the back on this picture behind it. The draft gear lugs and the draft gears can be broken down into the front rear lugs, and the rear lugs are secured to the center sill of the rear of the draft geared pocket. In some cases, they may be part of the center plate spider casting. Front lugs are generally part of the striking casting. Alright, this is an example of a draft gear. From the coupler, the draft gear from the left, the coupler key slot, the key, the draft gear, the support plate, the vertical yoke, and the bolster center line. The side bearing satisfactory repair and renew, check and adjusting missing and no clearance. That's the assembly of a truck. The side bearings consisting of a special steel plate with a flat bearing surface with contact, similar plates on the body bolster fabricated as parts of the bolster. They are designed to steady the car and to prevent the excessive rocking and the maintaining intermittent contacting with similar members of the body of the bolster. Instead of the flat bearing surface, the combination of the rollers, rockers may be found on some cars. New car specifications required bearing clearance to be adjusted to the limits of 1/8 of an inch to a 1/4 of an inch per bearing, and the measure to each of the bearing with the car on the level track with the car body level. The total side bearing clearance of the B, N, and the R, and the A, and L, and A, and the R corners must be the same as the total clearance at the B and L, A, and R corners, and the permissible variation of 1/8 of an inch. Rising end of the car above the truck with the side bearings can be inspected. Beware of the brokerage of the repaired placement indicated. The truck should be rolled out from the under of the car in facility of the repair. The replacement, if necessary, old side bearing can be burned off, and no one affixed by the riveting welding original manner care will be taken in adjusting the proper clearance. This is a side roller bearing. Your side frame bolster and column guides, a satisfactory repair or new. You're going to see which one qualifies. Check the broken patch or needs to be plated or striking or worn. Your truck side frame bolster gib limits of the wheels and chain of the truck dismantled. The wear on the truck side frame columns bolster must be measured. The disassemble when where the exceed limits should be at least repaired. The typical truck, the bearing clearance with the truck built into the features of the repair with the total clearance between the bolster and truck side frames of the column reaches the lateral 1/8 of an inch, longitude 3/4 of an inch. The repair to the nominal clearance dimension between the bolster and truck side frame, lateral inside and outside 1/8 of an inch for a total longitudinal of 3/16 of an inch. Trucks were built up to the snubbing features of the planning of the bearings. All bearing sizes having rolling bearings provided with the bearing lateral. All bearing sizes from having 5 inches of 9 inches to 5.5 to 10 inches. Rolling bearings provided with no bearing lateral. The repair total clearance between the bolster and truck side of the frame column reaches the lateral 1/8 of an inch, and manufacturer's specification on longitudinal. The repair to the nominal clearance dimension between the bolster and the truck side frame is actually on the outside 1/4 of an inch. The total manufacturer specification on longitudinal clearance. Truck with a built-in snobbing feature, the 6 inches by 11 inches, 6.5 by 12 inches, 7 and by 12-inch roller bearings will provide no bearing lateral repair with a total clearance between the bolster and truck side from the frame from the columns of reach of 1.5 inches with my specification of the manufacturer on the wearing of the frame of the bolster column wearing plates of the friction shoes, ballast, and column surfaces. The repair to the nominal clearance dimension between the bolster truck side frames is 1/2 an inch. Inside and out, and total longitude, the manufacturer longitudinal clearance, primarily meeting the wear frame with the bolster clamp, the wear frame, wear plates, friction shoes, bolster column. See maintenance instructions for truck designer and manufacturer. Alright, this is a method of making a cast steel truck side frame. The top of the wheelbase variation, outside of the end of the frame, an integral box side frame. The optional location for the solution for the area on the end and the wheelbase variation, outside end of the pedestal view of the frame. You have your variation per number. The 6 button remaining the side frame has been engaged. You gauge it plus or minus 3/16 of an inch. Sorry, the note 3, the 1/4 of an inch diameter and 1/4 of the minimum height of the button to the head of the caster, the left-handed journal of the box, the left-handed pedestal in the area, shown on the manufacturer's chip off the buttons and follows the indicated with the wheelbase variation. Note number 2, the frames of like number to be assembled in the same truck, however, the frames consecutively numbered to be made. It may be made with 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and it may be impaired, but 1 and 3 and 3 and 6, etc. must be assembled in the same truck. Note number 3, side frames removed from the repairs must be gauged in the wheelbase proper to number the solutions that must appear and the buttons applied for the frame and the welding when necessary, where necessary. Alright, this is an illustration of the welding indicator of the fractions casting elements. At the top you have a ride control truck, the limit of the wear, the indicator of the friction casting. To the left you have a National C1 truck, wear limited notch, replace wedge when the notch is 1/16 of an inch deep or less, friction casting, and you have friction casting with a limited wear to indicator of the barber style stabilized truck, and when friction faces the worn to be extended to the limited wear indicator, obliterated friction casting should be replaced. Here you have the bolster gib side frames and the wear plates. The bolster gib wear plate, the side frame wear plate. Examples of a bolster gib and side frame wear plate. Illustration of repairing welding truck side frames. On the top you have a over-the-head view of the trucking hanger bracket unit guide bracket with 1 inch in space, the diameter, 1 inch clearance, roof liner repair and permissible, no heat treatment. Alright, spring packaging. You're going to check if it's satisfactory, needs to be repaired or renewed. Check if it's compressed or missing, broken, or plates or wood. The truck springs of the truck bolster ends properly fitted between the columns of the truck side will rest on the unit of the cluster with the coil springs, which in turn are set up to build up the strut, holder, spring pocket of the truck side frame. The truck bolster make up the spring cluster, and dependent upon the loads and springs travel dictated operating the conditions of the cluster will cap the seat. The plates are removable since the fixed as you neither the bolster nor the side frame. The spring replacement bolster coil spring may break between the lost and occurs on one spring of the not serious, having an additional strain with the plane of the remaining strings. In the case of the heavy load of the cars, they may be unable to carry the load. The possible destroying the truck failure, hot journal, derailment, other serious and resulting breakage to connecting the may cause the spring to become loose and eventually lose the spring plank, damage great pressure applied with the springs, resulting in broken springs, the tilting of the truck. When the spring is found broken, missing a new spring may be installed. To do this, the truck may be partially disassembled. Following the procedure outlined above, the weight of must be taken to the bolster raised enough for the spring to come free. The new spring should be fit in the seat correctly, exactly, and have the snub characteristics as the other springs of the group. Here is the truck tells you the parts. The side bearing axle, the center plate, the brake lever, the brake hanger, the brake shoe, the brake beam, the brake pin, the wheel, the rail, the bottom conducting rod, the journal box, side frame, side spring plank, and the coil spring and the bolster. Alright, example of the snubbing device. You see the snubbing device in the corner. The example of the spring pack type snubbing device on the bottom. The truck spring condemning height of the D2 is actually the load carrying spring, the condemning height of 7 7/8 of an inch, D3 at 8 5/8 of an inch, D4 9 16 of an inch, D5 9 5/8 of an inch, D6 9 5/16 of an inch, D6A 8 3/8 of an inch, and D7 10 inches. That is the load carrying spring condemning free weight. Condemning heights for the excessive corrosion pitting of the freight truck springs is based upon the 50% of loss of the reverse travel at the maximum working load. The D2 outer and inner is 8 1/4 inch with a test load of 55 2,200 pounds. Recommended commanding height at the test load is 7 9 32 of an inch plus or minus 1/32 of an inch, or 7 5 32 of an inch for the inner on the minus 1/32 of an inch. The D32 inner and outer and inner are 9/16 of an inch, 55 and 2,200 pounds of load, 7 5/16 of an inch and minus 1/32 of an inch. The D4 inner and outer has nominal height of 9 5/8 of an inch, test load of 55 and 2,200 pounds with a 7 3/16 of an inch plus or minus on the outer and the inner 7/16 of an inch plus or minus 1/32 of an inch. D5 outer and inner. The outer is 10 5/16 of an inch, and the inner is 9 15/16 of an inch. Both with the 10 1/4 of an inch on the outer, and the inner 10 15/16 of an inch. And that test load 5,500 for the outer, and all the inners are 2,200 except for the D6 a D5 outer and inner has 7/16 of an inch plus or minus on the outer, and 7/20 of an inch plus or minus 1/32 on the outer. The D6A inner has 9 5/16 of an inch nominal height, 9 inches on the out. D6A inner, 2,200 pounds for the inner test load, and 22. The D6A 1,100 pounds, 6/18 of an inch, 6/18 of an inch plus or minus 1/32 of an inch, and the D7 outer has a 10/30/16 nominal clearing height. D7 outer inner has 10 3/4 of an inch nominal new height. Test load 5,500 on the outer and 2,200 in the inner. The outer 7/5/16 of an inch plus or minus 1/32 of an inch in the inner. And the D7 is 7/11/16 plus or minus 1/32 of an inch. The modification stake pockets, satisfactory repair or renewed. Check the seals, straps, or other specified corrected or bent. This is the basic rail car components. The body bolster, center still, center cover plate. This floor string is the body bolster. Through the middle, you see the end sills, draft gear, the side sills, the stake pockets, the diagonal braces, side bolsters, cross tie, cross bears, center sills, and body bolster. The underframe of the car used in theater operations. On the left, you start with the intermediate sills, body bolster, coupler, draft gear, pocket, striking plate, center cross ties, and center sills and cross bearers. Here's a component of the parts being installed on the front frame, lowering the underframe of the truck's repair procedures. They have a bench to the template, marking the necessary for the work. Stop on the template, and they put the rivets in, straightening and pushing in the end sill, jacking against the body bolster. You have the jack sill on the block, in between two blocks, in between the side and the sill, center sill and the body bolster. 5/6 is a template for an I-beam. The handbrake shaft wheel, satisfactory repair or broken, and check if the shim or RR or needs to be renewed. Alright, basically the brakes, the TM 55203 for complete brake inspection, repair, check, or the TM maintenance of the railway car, Chapter 8. That's where you'll find the brake repair, maintenance of car section. C. Making ground inspection, sandcaster deposit on the rail in front of the consisting lead wheels in the direction of the movement of the consistent rear wheels. Fuel tank must not have a leak. Brake cylinder position must be at a minimum sufficient to permit the brake shoes to clear the wheels when the brake is released. Maximum not more than total travel displayed in the block 10 of the form of 6180498 minus 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches. Brake shoes must be secured aligned with the wheel. Brake rigging must not be bounded or fouled. There must be no cracks, broken, or missing of any of the locomotive truck, wheel, gear, case, draft gear, coupler, carrier, and jumper cables must not be frayed, damaged, or be stowed in if unused. However, each of the connecting to a work receptacle of a dummy receptacle. The CSX air brake training handling. These are just like the top things that you are in the air brake train handling and equipment handling book. This book, if you work for CSX, it should be in your back pocket. The 5500 series air brake generals, 5050 locomotive air brake equipment, 5100 series, the air brake testing general requirements, 5150 making locomotive air brake testing, 5200 making training air brake inspection testing, 5300 locomotives, 5350 locomotive condition, 54 locomotive operation, 5500 the fundamentals of train handling, 5550 conventional handling, 5600 help service, 5650 the special handling of the train procedures, 5700 telemetry equipping trains, 5750 telemetry qualification, 5800 arming telemetry of the two-way compatibility, 5850 testing two-way telemetry emergency capability, 5900 disarming emergency capability, 5950 en route failures and defects. You'll have your A in this book. The Appendix A is setting up locomotive air brakes. In the book illustration, Appendix B illustration brake valve handling position, and Appendix C locomotive data guide. All right, here's the badging plate of the. They should show the truck. The brake alignment, you have your brake rigging dimensions and your truck lever cylinder level braking dimensions. That's a badge plate. It should be on the car. The air hose, split hose, worn hose, or hose split. The effects. Look for defects on the air hose. This is another defection if it has a soft blend split or tore straight shaft handbrake. Vertical gear handbrake. The 50-ton U.S. boxcar showing retainer valve, a typical horizontal type of the handbrake, and a vertical level type gear handbrake. Wheels. You're going to check if the satisfactory repair or need to be renewed. You're going to check if the flange, the cracked or flat spots or thin rim. Type of the trucks. Car trucks have been generally in paragraph 3.2. The many different types of the same general characteristics applicable to all the text, limited with the conventional four-wheel cast bolus, recoil, spring, side frame, freight car, the truck, and discussed in paragraph 419, 421. Inspection, repair, and the maintenance of the car truck is an essential part of the railway operations, as the wheel must roll with the personnel, equipment that supplies the rail, wheel flange wheels. Sharp treads wear thin, the brake shoes wear out, and the diameter of the car, the wheel journals decrease with the length, increase with the surface of the car, journals wear down until are even with the journal finishing, reaching the danger point of the curves. The defective surface must be smooth, polished to create the new wearing surface to finish with recondition, eventually with the reduce the journal to an unsafe diameter and length. The length also becomes greatly with the lateral movement of the bearing of the journal, excessive for safe operation. The maintenance of the truck as a unit of the body of the car may settle because of the wear of the will treads, journal bearings that is possible, shorting the spring resulting from the setting. This setting may be of vital importance since the vital height of the settled car to the other coupled car is distributed. However, the car can be brought up to the proper level, basing the shim liners and required thickness under the truck springs. The replacing of that be affected the weight springs, the blades of the truck bolster the body of the car. The car also can replace raised and the placing of the shim, the center plate that requires the compensation. Adjusting the side bearings, the proper height of the car can be established, measuring the height of the coupler from the rail level. This should not exceed 34 and a half inches center of the coupler on the counter type of cars. This is a gauge example for wheel defect worn coupler limit. The wheel journal coupler and wheel journal fillet gauge. This is journal coupler and journal fillet gauge. Check your coupler limit and your wheel defects. Method for gauging flat spots, road surface limit, shop limit. Method gauging thin ranges. Method of gauging vertical flanges. Method of gauging flange wheels condemnable. Method of gauging vertical flange wheels condemnable. Cast steel wheels not having flat back for face rims. All other steel wheels. Method of measuring high flanges. Gauges 3 and 64 inches worn throughout the spot is an initial area outround of 33 inches wheel. Alright, your built-in tread of wheel, the condemnable whenever the tread has been built in a metal 1/8 of an inch or higher than the wheel of tread. Grooved tread of the wheel is condemnable whenever the one or more of the grooves worn in the depth of 1/8 of an inch or more, and the gauge of the defect of the wheels. Measure the worn gauge. Measure of gauge worn and flange wheel. Shows the condemning line of the freight car surface and the measuring point. The method of gauging depth of the witness groove in the flange. Method of gauging location witness groove of the flange. Method of gauging flat flange height. Method of gauging vertical flange. To the left, you see burnt rim, a shattered rim, a spread rim, and another spread rim. Surface defect found on the turning wheels, tread, shelved tread, built-up tread, grooved treaded wheel, cracked hub. You see a cracked broken plate or thermal cracks extending through the rim. Crack originating from the hole burned in the wheel. Method of gauging wheels. Wheels are out of the gauge of the dimension if less than 53 inches and exceeding 53 3/8 of an inch. Wheel practices, you have your Class A of axles A through F, 3 3/4 of an inch by 7 inches, with a nominal wheel C, the diameter 5/8 of an inch and 5.5 inches. The cast iron 30 to 55, the 5.5, 6 foot 1.5, 35 to 60 steel nominal. Steel wheels maximum tonnage per mounted pressure in tons 55 to 70, 55 to 80. B, the 4 1/4 inch by 8 inch of the nominal wheel. C, to the 5 3/4 inch, 6 and 5/16 of an inch, 35 to 60 in the cast iron. B, B type minimum axis, 45 60 minimum axis. Casting steel 70 to 100, 75 to 110. Lower on the high side of the journal size. The D, 5.5 by 10 inches, 7 inch nominal seat diameter with 45 to 75 cast iron pressure in tons. Wheel steel wheels 75 to 110. Also the Class D, 5.5 by 10 inch, 7 and 9/16 nominal wheel height. Cast iron 50 to 75 pressure in tons. 80 to 120 steel minimum maximum steel. The journal sizes are 6 and 11 inches. Nominal wheel seat diameter 7/5 of an inch, 1 and 8 and a quarter. The 7/5 of an inch has 50, 75 pressure in tons, and cast iron 80 to 120 in steel. The 8 and a quarter type Class E axle has 55 and 80. Cast iron maximum steel 85 to 130, and the Class F 6.5 by 12 inches, 8 and 1/8 of an inch, and 8 and 3/4 of an inch. There are no cast iron wheels, and the steel wheel axle wheels are 85 to 130 and 90 to 140 on the high side. These are dimension tolerances from A to the A, B, C, D, E, G, L, and number 1, number N1, N2, O1, 8, O2, P, and R1, R2 maximum finishes. These are the cast iron freight wheel car dimensions, recasting, and they actually re-thread them and stuff like that. They go down in size on the dimension columns for clearance. Axles and journals, satisfactory repair or renew. Check the collar heat and RJ stamp of the fillet. Axles and journals. Standard axles design, dimensions of the base, load rating of the fixed by the journal shows the limit of the wear, the new dimensions of the bearing freight of the car. The axles figure the same date of the passenger car exactly with the new passenger cars, or use the new cars the passenger car surface the road rating individual axles shown in the table. Wheels axles are selected in accordance with the tables. And common defects cited with the low or short of the general description of various common axles. Journal defects recommended to practice. Cut in the journal of the depression continuing out of the streak in an injury. The surface of the metal of the wheel, the seat of the journals, such as a cut in journal must not be removed except with the machine and cut in a lathe. Such a defect, if allowed, remaining can cause a broken axle or hot. Journal 2, the between the axle, a second of the dismounted axle should be checked with the lath between the center from the rotundity, concentrity, taper, and the wheel seat of the journal. If an axle is found to be bent, it should be scraped unless the journal's wheels and seat of the can be turned up within the specified limits of practice, followed by the leave of the shock witness marked around with the wheels to show that the axle has been checked into the lath. The broken axle circumferential lapse or seams any portion of the axle likely to cause the trouble. Broken axle with one of the width broken or collar must be scrapped. For a broken journal fillet, standardize the lathe. It's tool simple to show practice. A journal fillet normally is turned to a standard radii of the new axle. The rules, however, permit the use of second-hand axles. Minimum the back fillet of radius of 1/8 of an inch from C or large for the axle gauge with the wheel defect. The minimum of the radius should be employed only with the axles reapplied with the refinishing and the restoring of the fillets for standard radii would cause the journal to be scrapped. Deficiency length and diameter. 5. The journal length of worn limit. The length of worn journal should be measured at a point of 1/4 of an inch. Journal surface on the face of the end of the car, and at a point of 1/8 of an inch below the dust guard seat of the back fillet is shown in Figure 420. Any page shown in length of 4 journals in accordance with the method used in Figure 421 illustrates the gauge of the railroads through the United States. 6. The collar worn limits where will conform to those shown. 7. The diameter worn below the limits where conform to shown. Wheel seats below the limits where the conform to the shown. Journal length worn limit. The axle usually scrapped because the journal had been reached the condemning length rather than because the journal wheel seats reached for the condemning diameter. The theater operation of the axle being short supply 1/8 of an inch diameter of the journal. Remove the average score cuts in the fillets. Restore the worn fillets without lengthening the journal applicable, reducing thickness of the end and collar. Alright, a plain axle journey wear limits. The plain axle journal wear limits 4.25 inch by 8. The journal collar is 3 16 of an inch for all journal size standards, and the journal length is 8 and 11/16 for all journal size standards A, B at point A and B. The 4.25 inch by 8 of an inch has a journal diameter of 3 3/4 of an inch. A 5 9 by 9 inch has 4.5 inch journal diameter. 5.5 inch by 10 inch has a 5 inch journal diameter. A 6 by 11 inch has a 5.5 inch journal diameter. 6.5 by 12 inch has a 6.5 by 6.5 inch journal diameter, and 7 by 12 inch has a 6.5 journal diameter. Your plain axle wear limit. The plain axle wear limit. The journal size 4.25 inch has a journal collar of 5.5 inch. B journal length of 6 16 of an inch. Journal diameter of 4 and 11/16 of an inch. 5 to 9 inch has a journal collar of 6.25 inch. The journal length of It should be rejected when less than 6 3/4 of an inch. Journal diameter 4.5 inch, 5.5 by 10 inches. Just reject when less through 6 3/4 of an inch. Journal collar, journal length 3 7 3/16 of an inch. Journal diameter 5 3/4 of an inch, 6 11 inches, 7 3/8 of an inch. Journal collar 7 7/8 of an inch. Journal length 6 5/16 of an inch. Journal diameter reject when less 6.5 inch by 12 inch has the 7 7/8 of an inch. Journal collar, journal length of say 8 3/8 of an inch, and journal diameter of 6 3/4 of an inch. Reject when less. The 6 and 12 inch, 7 and 7/8 of an inch, and journal collar 9 1/4 inch. Journal length and journal diameter 7 7/8 of an inch. Journal reject when less than. Alright, your rolling bearings, axles, wear limits. Your journal size 4 1/4 inch, has a wheel seat, black collar of 5.5 inch, wheel seat raised at 6 16 of an inch, and an axle seat 4 11/16 of an inch. Reject when less 5 and 9.5 inches. Reject when less for 6 1/4 inch at the black wheel seat collar. The wheel seat raised at 6 3/4 of an inch, and axle center at 5.5 by 10 inches. A wheel seat, black collar of 6. Reject when less than 6 3/4 of an inch. A wheel seat raised at 7 3/16 of an axle center of 5 3/4. 6 11 inch journal size standard wheel seat, black collar. Reject when less than 7 3/8 of an inch. A wheel seat raised at 7/8 of an inch. Rejected when less 6 5/16. Reject when less 6.5 by 12 inches, 7 7/8 of an inch. Wheel seat raised of 8 3/8 of an inch, and an axle of 6 3/4 of an inch. Reject when less 7 and 12 inches. The wheel seat raised of 9 1/4 inch. Reject when less, and the axle center of 7 7/8 of an inch. Reject when less. Alright, your axle load rating for A, B, C, D, E, N, F, and G. The axle AR has a designation of 1,500 pounds each wheel and 666 each four-wheel truck. B has a 2,400 pound with a maximum four-wheel at 103,000 pounds. C has a 33.5 for each wheel designate on the axle with 142 for a four-wheel. D has a 42,000 pounds for each wheel and 177 for 1,000 pounds for a four-wheel truck. The E has 52 and 50, 52.5 for each axle load on each axle load, 22 and 100 pounds for a four-wheel truck. The F has a 63,000 pounds for each axle, and four-wheel truck has a 263,000 pound. The G has a 76,000 pounds with a four-wheel axle of 315,000 pounds. Alright, your new limiting dimensions for the plane right car axles. You have your classification from B, C, D, E, and F and G. The journal sizes when the road surface limits requiring the removal of the axle from service when reached, and less than when reached, and when less than your shop limits if greater than, and when less than your dimensions of a new new oversized axles being 1/8 larger. Another dimension plane bearing axle A, B, C, D, E, and F and G is the journal size. The classification of the journal size, the road surface limits when reached and when less than, the shop limits when greater than or when less than, and the dimensions of the new oversized axles when less than for passenger cars on this side. Alright, your class of axles, you have your A, B, C, D, and F, and A, B, C, D, and F. Journal dimensions new, the load pounds and each designed to carry the nominal capacity to carry based on a four-wheel axle. Four-wheel truck, nominal weight of the railway car loaded to base on the four-wheel truck. New axle should be applied with the second-hand axle wheel seats turned to the finished diameter approximately. When a new axle must be applied to the new wheels, the new axle wheel seat should be turned to the compromised diameter. When the bore of the usable old wheels have reached the maximum diameter shown on the item above, that may be applied with the oversized axle. The wheel turned into the finished diameter, not more than the wheel seats of the old axles may be turned to the minimum finished diameter. These are economical selections of wheels and axles. Your length of the worn journal, you sure to the top of the incorrect measure of 9 11/16 and 9 15 5 16 of an inch correct measure of the contour worn of 1/8 of an inch with a 1/4 inch on the other end and of length of worn journal. The gauge to measure the length of worn journals on the cars, the A from A to F axles inclusive 5/16 of an inch by 6/7/8 of an inch with a 1/5/8 of an inch with 3/16 of an inch for a curl of 1.5. These dimensions. The journal box and lubricators, check if they're satisfactory, repair or renewed, check for below or missing. Inspection of journal box, and when the inspection reveals any of the following conditions, actions will be taken and indicated below. The journal packing, the dirty mixed with the grease with the bullet should be repacked. The journal box contained with an excessive amount of the snow, ice, water should be repacked, particularly with the attention shown and given to the boxes located under the drain, ice bunkers, and refrigerator of the cars. When found to contain drippings, the box should be repacked. The journal with having the been in high water should be cleaned and repacked as soon as the practicable care. Full examination must be made of the corroded with the pitted journals. The re-oiling the packaging should dry along the top of the after the reset with there less than 1/2 of an inch of the oil. The bottom of the box oil should be added. The starting of the back of the box warning that oils can spout forward to both sides of the journal. The direction of the car movement is known should be added only on the rising of the side of the journal. Only the box lid must be properly must close properly. There must be no loose threads and packing hanging outside. If necessary, cold weather to cut back the thinner and hot car oil. Then oil having the flash point of 300 degrees Fahrenheit or above may be used. The use of kerosene oil or oil with the flash point below 300 degrees Fahrenheit is prohibited. This is a typical journal boxing assembly with the journal box lid, packing axle, journal, and the wedge, and also an inserted bearing. But the dust guard inserted here in the bearing. Your loose waist and shield must be matted together into rolls. Number the rolls and the optional last roll applied, but should be large enough to fill without using smaller pieces when applying the rolls. Also, loose ends to be tucked under. This is a method of packing the journal boxes. Typical lubricating journal pad. Your center plate satisfactory repair or renew. Check if broken or loose. Your center plate of the truck bolster, center plate of the depression when the center casting is riveted. The center so the car fits in the help with the place of the wheel of the car to the body. The confirmation of the casting of the center pin of the center plate should be inspected from the presence of dirt, scale, form material, which will cause binding on the above. The wear of the center plate should be lubricated, suitable hand grease prior to the replacement under the car. The center plate should be examined for the cracks and broken portions. If the damage is noted, but the center plate of the bolster is necessary, should be removed, outlined in a B above the replacement. The new one, if the center plate is riveted, it can be replaced. But single lead liner should be the shim in with the center plate to adjust the coupler height. A permissible, providing vertical bearing of the surface. The center plate is not reduced below 1/1/8 of an inch. Such liner should be only one piece of the exceeding with 1/4 of an inch thickness. To inspect the center plate of the cleaning, lubricating the car can be alerted, hoisted the jacks at the sufficient height of the to make a center plate visible with a suspension care should be taken and put to the hands and the fingers of the center casting under such circumstances. This is a typical center frame with the body bolster, center pin, center for the center plate of the above, the center plate itself, center plate, and another figure across overhead under the center plate bolster. Roller bearing is adapter lugs, satisfactory repair, renewed, check if they are heat worn, or the check if worn or missing seals or broken. Renewing journal bearings, backing lug is cracked, worn 1/4 of an inch bone lengthwise either end, combined with wear length of 3 1/8 of an inch, length worn depth 1/8 of an inch more in the area of the 50% of the contact face. Combined wear on both sides of the lug, extension 1/4 of an inch more at any location limit. The renewed journal bearings when the lining is worn with the brass any location 3/8 of an inch above the lower edge of the brass side. Renewed the journal bearings when the lining is loose and broken out. The lining is pulled, or the lining is pulled in the journal contact area indicated with wear pairing. Renewed journal bearings when the wheels and axles are changed. 2 bearings for each side of the wheels, or if they are missing. Tapered rolling bearing. This is pictured of a tapered rolling bearing. Heavy duty bearing assembly application exploded view. From the outside in, outside to from left to right. The pipe plug, the lubricating fitting, the cap screw, the lock plate, the axle end cap, the seal wearing ring, seal backing rigging, vent fitting. On the bottom you have the outer cone roller assembly bearing cap, double or the inner cone roller cap cone spacer. Nomenclature for a heavy duty bearing assembly. Also, here you have a packing iron waist grab hook. These also help with pulling out the bearings. Do not stick your finger in a bearing hole. Recommended method of stacking bearings is on a piece of wood with lays with drill holes like on the carved on the side, stacked in a refrigerator and lubricated. Defective car holder, place plaque card holders throughout and board, satisfactory repair, renewed, check, tighten, and replace. Always make sure there's a plaque board on the card, and if not, make sure it's replaced with the proper plaque card. The plaque cards classes. You have explosive in the division number of compatibility group, the explosive in the division number of compatibility group, and explosive compatibility group 1, very intensive explosive, extremely intensive explosives. Class 2 flammable gases, non-toxic, non-flammable gases, poisonous gases, zone A. Class 3 flammable liquids, class 4 flammable solids, spontaneous combustible when materials are wet. Class 5 oxidizers, organic peroxides, class 6 poison liquids, PGI 1 zone inhalations, hazard, and class 7 radioactive materials. Your paint condition, satisfactory repair or renew. Railway cars equipment were painted with the required preservation purpose, not merely for the purpose of beautification of the change in color, unless considered with the necessary safety and security posed by the responsible commander of the expect when the otherwise operations will be painted in lustrous olive green in the continental United States. All exposed exterior painted surfaces on the frame of the passenger, hospital, kitchen, caboose of the guard cars will be painted with gloss olive green. Exposed with the exterior surfaces on the gondola, hopper, and tanker cars will be painted with the gloss black. All painting marking with the accordance with the AR 7461, the painting standards contained within the MIL P3320, the painting of the theater's operation. All the exterior finishing coats will be olive drap and semi-gloss. All completely list of paintings authorized use of the railway freight passenger cars in table 13.1. All right, those are the painting costs. Automatic authorized painting glosses. Safety in general, as a material, the Army policy safety markings of railway equipment equipped with the CONUS only engaged with the painting operation must be conditioned by the supervisor exercise caution in handling the paints. Poisonous compounds often used in the paints. Personally working with the paints should wash our hands and face carefully before handling the food and keeping cuts on the wounds free from painting materials. Many thinners create a danger fume, and the personnel can be seriously injured through the inhalation. Many parent paint materials are flammable and use of matches, open flames, and smoking should be avoided in painting areas. B. Ventilation. When the painting the inside of the equipment having a small opening, the outer and the air hose electric blower will be used to force continuous flow of the fresh air in closed space. 2. The persons will work with it together when the inside, while the third person remains on the outside near the opening to ensure the safety of the personnel working on the interior. The merging 15 minutes intervals of fresh air. All right, you're going to check in the end of the mechanical condition code. You're going to see if it's satisfactory repair or to be renewed. If there's something wrong with the, say, your job, the publications, or the car, you can always put in a standard improvement proposal. Then jot it down about the dope on this form carefully, tear it, and find it, and drop it in the mail. Something wrong with the publication. In this space, tell what's wrong and what should be done. Thank you for listening to my slideshow. Hope you learned a thing about how to fill out a field inspection of the railroad cars.